live from the drama-free true crime destination, bringing you past the headlines, straight to the core of justice, where the truth stands firm and the story is set in stone. This is The Final Word.
Welcome back to The Final Word. Welcome back to Loaded. It is so best the fact with me. We're talking about the Nolan Wells investigation. Tonight, I'm now. We're not letting go. Moving from another story. Ability. Or some questions around confront the contradictions that have a responsibility to demand answers. Truth, alerts, missing messages, and conflicting notes. Some people call it being relentless. Some call it being obsessive. I call it winning the job. The faith is going to do that job with the intensity of a pit bull because no one deserves clarity, deserves transparency. And this young man with the inconsistencies. And we're going to lay out this so you see exactly why they cannot and not be only of accountability. So join me now for the word because we're not letting it go. Not now, ever. Again, we're going to have you along for the ride and but I'm glad you're patient with me. I appreciate you guys so much. So now, having said all that, let's open the case file on no clear this with you. I will be to this screen in moments. That works. All right. First, let's this start with who we're talking about here. 18-year-old Nolan Xavier of Resolution Springs, Mississippi. He was a student athlete with no conflicts. On 2026, America's 250th birthday, Nolan Wells traveled with 3 friends to Horn Island. Conflicting emerged regarding his return to the island. Surface show requesting his home from another individual he never owned. On July 6th, near the waters, the discovery was found near the waters of Horn Island. There was decomposition present, but a law enforcement statement stated foul affected. The autopsy, however, completed and sealed. There is no cause or manner of death. Organs were retained for examination as far as throat structures. The state autopsy. The independent autopsy, however, causes under confrontation. There were tissue trauma, and there was restriction on the skull, which has been ruled inconclusive. Now, the digital evidence says the phone returned without Nolan. Messages were and joint forensic review is pending. As far as goes, the stayed behind with a young woman. The young woman said Nolan was with the group. Evidence shows Nolan arguing for his phone. Investigative actions has the district attorney come review. Civil rights attorneys, which I'll bring to you in a few minutes. National organizations are monitoring this case. There's a reward out for information leading to and likely a conviction of whoever may have possibly killed Nolan Wells. And the community pressure is increasing. So, 7 that answer. How did Nolan get in the water? Was Nolan alone? Why were his messages deleted? Why are the witness accounts conflicting with each other? What does the autopsy? Was there pre-drowning trauma? What role did the phone incident play? 7 questions, barely any answers. The case status, the active investigation is going on. There's a grand jury pending. Autopsy is sealed. Independent autopsy inconclusive. Digital evidence under review, and national attention is ongoing. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're literally nowhere. Sure, we outline, but that's about it. But before I get to the timeline, let me to the article courtesy of the Associated Press, no less authority. And what I'm gonna do is I may read the article, but I want you to keep a look at this photo of Nolan Wells with his mother. I'll be showing a few other photos with them together. I'll touch up on this as I can do. This is an under photo with him and his mother together. Nolan on the left, and this is his mother on the Christine Wansley. Here's what the Associated Press is. Keep in mind, this was did back on July 11th. 18-year-old Nolan Xavier Wells took friends celebrate the 4th of July on an Mississippi. Never came back. 2 days later, he was found dead. Wells' parents say the man with conflicting, possible explanations, and missing details. It is a case shadowed by the state's fraught racial history and lingering distrust in law enforcement. A news conference in New York City, Christine and Elmore Wansley called for third and trans investigation. Skeptical claims that Wells told his friends he would be dealing without it, and suggests that he, an elite athlete who knew how to swim, had accidentally drowned. Now, honestly, as you can see here from this shot of Mom Christine with the Reverend Al Sharpton on your left and civil rights Ben Crump to right, there is absolutely no way to say that elite athlete who had an accident drowned, unless he'd been drowned by friends. Getting us to that, I like to let the evidence come in and work our way from that. Wells' body was found early that Monday morning on the shore of about 7 miles off the coast, more than a day after he was last seen. The roughly 11-mile-long spit of land is near Alabama. The island is uninhabited and accessible only by boat. Only 200 people were there on the 4th of July, according to the family's lawyers. They said, "We just want to know what happened and why our baby didn't come home." She was looking upward several times as she stood alongside the lawyer, Ben Crump, Reverend Al Sharp, who officiated Wells's funeral. The family commissioned an autopsy. Crump said Wells finished an independent autopsy performed by a forensic pathologist in D.C. who ties to Mississippi law enforcement. While they await the results of the autopsy, which took weeks, they also attempts to recover messages that have appeared to have been deleted from his. They will eventually turn the device over authorities, according to Mr. Crump. Wells' family encouraged witnesses to come and submit any report that may show him on Horn Island, echoing a call by the Jackson County Sheriff's Office to help shed light on the moment for Wells' appearance and death. Now here's the distraught months, a long heartbroken dad. They try to comfort each other, give it no fact that they lost their son. And his final shot is Ben Crump speaking out during that news conference. Standing right beside him is the Reverend Al Sharpton. A photo was posted on social media purportedly from the boat ride to the island. It shows Wells with his arms around 3 male friends. Sheriff John Ledbetter said Wells' friends were cooperating and that investigators don't suspect foul play. Crump said those friends now have lawyers and that his investigators haven't attempted to speak with him yet. Nolan Wells' death has led to rampant speculation and suspicion as people grapple with Mississippi's history of racial tension and what it means to be a black person in a majority white space. Actor and producer Tyler is helping to pay for his funeral. Former NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick is helping pay for the independent autopsy, and filmmaker Spike Lee showed up to the news conference to show support for Wells' family. According to attorney Crump, the family trusts missing authorities. Crump said Wells' parents hired him to conduct an independent investigation into their son's death because they don't trust that law enforcement officials will perform a fair inquiry in a state still reckoning with its Jim Crow past, which includes 1955 lynching and the murders of 3 civil rights workers in the 1960s. Reporters at Al Sharpton's National Action Network headquarters in Harlem. The history of Mississippi is something that they don't just read about in books. It's a lived experience for many Black Americans that oftentimes when our children are killed in highly questionable situations, that there is this notion that, oh, there was nothing wrong, no foul play, let's just sweep it under the rug. Well, we refuse to sweep it under the rug. This is the second case that Crump is in the state of Mississippi in recent months. He also was recently retained by the family of a killed when police fired into a moving car. The Associated Press this week that the fact that Wells chose to stay on the island with the assumption that he was going to ride back to the mainland with someone else. Now they say that Wells didn't have his cell phone or his keys, but his friends did. Ben Crump asked what a teenager would leave behind if they were going to the island. What teenager would take their? It's not adding up at all. Crump said bystander video from the island showed a person he said was Wells or someone to give him his phone. In another discrepancy, Crump said that a witness reported Wells had planned to leave on the boat with his friends in the sheriff's theory. The friend back, but he's left there with some story about how he said he'd leave him behind, Sharp said. But by some magic, his friend has his key phone. The sheriff did not return the Associated Press's messages seeking his response to the family's concerns. Parents try to track down their son, then they report him missing. Wells's mother, Christine Wansley, said she started to worry when a friend of his called at 11 o'clock on the 4th of July. After trying to track him down on her own, she reported him missing to the police and went with her husband to meet an officer in a McDonald's parking lot. The process exacerbated by a dispute over which law agency had over the island. One of his friends also reporting to the United States Coast Guard. Nolan Wells' father, Elmore Wansley, said he went out on a boat on the morning of July 5th looking for his son near Hawaii Island. Crews from multiple and from state agencies began a search. His body was recovered early Monday. If he's drowning, nobody sees him drown. Nobody tries to help. I mean, he obviously stands out. I think he's the only black person when I'm looking at the videos. Wansley said she used an app to track his phone, and after a friend went to where it was on land to pick it up, noticed that some messages appeared to be deleted. Wells, Shutterbug, and had 2 Snapchat accounts, but both were devoid of pictures or saved messages, she said. As they searched for their son, Elmore Wansley went to retrieve Wells' keys from the home where he stayed with his friend from the boat the night before the island trip. His son's car was in the yard. Nolan Wells was described as a peacemaker with football aspirations. Wells would have turned 19 played receiver on the football team at Southwest Mississippi Community College in Summit, Mississippi, and had aspirations at playing at a high-level Division I. His coach, Les Station APT at Wells was a guy that never had a bad day. Never. He was very sociable with everyone. Didn't meet a stranger. He would pop up in my office and come sit on the couch just to hang out. Wansley said she and her husband school talked to him about navigating the racial tensions that still permeate the South. Wells was a peacemaker who didn't like division, once breaking to a dance while still in diapers to ease tensions while his parents were arguing, they said. He wanted everyone to and shied away from taking. Elmore Wansley said that no one is a person. The person said they last boat trip. He came to their house, baked them salmon for dinner, and hugged his mother goodbye. As people mourn and protest Wells's death, Kristen Wansley urged them to follow his example. Please be peaceful. Nolan was one who liked physical fights. He didn't even really like arguments. Don't go out there trying to be tough. Think about what Nolan would want, and he wouldn't want that type of behavior. That is such great advice from a mother standing up. Let's see if there's anybody. Nope. Guess not. All right. So now we're gonna get into his timeline, according to already know. Starting on the 4th, the boat trip. Nolan travels with 3 friends to Horn Island. His friends claim Nolan stayed behind with the human claims that Nolan did with the group. About the video, Nolan, his mother receives a concerning call late that night, and Nolan. On the 5th, the phone are back in the man, but he does not. The family notices deleted messages. 6th, Nolan's body is found near an island, but the sheriff states no. The very first press conference on the 10th, the family is speaking on national act and raises concerns about inconsistencies in the deleted messages. On the 15th, District Attorney Angel Myers McIlrath, there's an agreement reached for joint phone. I'm tired tonight, guys. Agreement has been reached for joint forensic phone inspection. He affirms that he'll go to a grand jury. The funeral was held on the 20th. This funeral was held in Springs. The rouse shop eulogy and transparency. In the last couple of days, the autopsy released at the NAACP convention. The state autopsy remains. The cause and manner of death both remain undetermined. So, what could have happened? What to Nolan Wells? But we're going to get deeper. How are we going to do that? I'm going to turn this man 50 grand, the host of VPI, Vinnie Politan Investigates. And only Vinnie Politan.
Investigation, so Nolan's family reached out for help.
Why do you say we need the investigation? It is because the family has distrust of the Mississippi law enforcement officials.
Working with attorney Ben Crump and had a private autopsy performed.
He found red into the back of his head towards those septal bone.
What happened at that conference? Ben Crump revealed a piece of information that got everyone's attention.
Face down, clothed.
But now there is push on that claim, creating confusion and more conflict as the investigation into the death of Nolan Wells continues. Investigations get a divisive war of words, social media, not just from the involved case. Also, what did this second autopsy of Nolan Wells, and what was he wearing when found face down in the water? I'm Vinny Politan. Let's investigate. The Horn Island is a death investigation. It's about how did he die? How did Nolan Wells die? Now, different things here. Will we ever get a true that he drowned? Well, that's the other part of the question that you may or may not get an answer to. Anything else? Rely upon witnesses coming forward and saying what they saw or what they didn't see, what they heard, didn't hear. So there's a lot to goes beyond just the autopsy, but the extremely revealing. And one of the things that was pointed second autopsy of Nolan Wells by the private was this injury to the back of the tissue, the back of the head. What was the source of this? And what was really significant is that the pathologist said this was not examined by the state pathologist. So how significant is that? Bring in our own expert in just a moment. Another question for this investigation: Nolan stay on the island? Why wasn't he on the boat or one of the that showed up that day to leave? Left. And that really gets to that's where there's been a little bit of a conflict of people's exactly Nolan's plans were. So that has to be resolved. And finally, what was he wearing when he was found? The big issue in the case. He's wearing a bathing suit in some of the images that have become public. People have tracked down from, I think, the latest that I've seen about 2:30, and we know the boat left around 4:30. So about 2 hours. One of the boats leaves, at least one of the boats leaves. He has swim trunks. Now, Ben Crump at the press conference where they're talking about the autopsy made a statement and revealed some information and absolutely sent shockwaves to the true crime world. Take a listen.
Christine, that the United Cajun are serving. That told us we haven't heard from any of their officials was found face down, fully clothed. That's significant to us because the last time we saw him on the videos, he without a shirt. At one on the shirt. Somebody saw something. Somebody knows something. There were almost 300-400 people. Somebody knows something.
Big moment, right? And you could hear the reaction from the people there. Like, what, he's fully clothed? Now, reaction from the United. These are folks who go out and help searches. Many of the true crime cases we cover, they're out there looking for missing people. The fact that some people misinterpreted what fully clothed is at this point. Nolan Wells was described only swim trunks. He was photographed in the day he went missing. The real issue is that attorney falsely stated during his conference that the United Cajun Navy told Nolan's that he was found fully clothed, to invent a story about him wearing a shirt. None of it is true. And at no time to discuss what we witnessed. We understand that controversy drives likes and to keep their eye on the ball. Misinformation has investigation and the community of Ocean Springs, Mississippi. We will misinformation when we see it, correct it with facts. Where did this all come from? Well, someone from the occasion on with Nancy Grace. And during that, which has been seen by more than 1 million people, it was stated he was clothed. So that's where the misinterpretation of what fully clothed means. It was a statement made to Nancy Grace on her show. And Nancy Grace also sort of emphasized that, yeah, he was fully clothed. That's where that all comes from. But apparently there's no discussion between the United Cajun Navy and the family, which seemed to indicate, unless he was saying, watching Nancy Grace's show. So it's like a game of telephone. So bottom line, and I think this is correct, the only thing that matters now are the facts. Was fully clothed. Now, the Cajun Navy on X, and they want help. They want sharing this. This is one of our followers found this photo on social media of a random family pair from Horn Island. We believe that may be Nolan Wells in the background. We're looking for the owner of the photo and a stamp. Thanks in advance. Again, that's significant. Trying to put together a timeline is very, very helpful. And if you have a photo, you don't know exactly when it was taken, figure it out. So if they could figure out when this photo was taken, and if it is Nolan Wells, now all of a sudden you're filling in more of the timelines and when he was there. So it could be very, very revealing in trying to figure out what time this photo was taken. Because if it's taken after the boat and the GPS is tracking where the boats were, it's a completely different picture. You've got hundreds
I've watched Mace's show. He was on HLN. And when it's cases like this, I've said this many times all over social media, and I'm going to say it again here tonight in BETHEA'S BYTE Reloaded, the final word. Nancy Grace is like a pit bull on a bone. She would get on case and not until justice is served. In fact, it's almost rumored right now that she still has her foot figuratively on the neck of one Casey Anthony, but that's a whole entire case in its entirety. In the meantime, dip out of shot and go right back to Vinnie Politan as he continues this investigating the death of Nolan Wells.
hundreds of people there, hundreds of potential witnesses. We need more information. So I want to talk more about this second autopsy, this private autopsy that was done of Nolan Wells' family. I'm going to need a little bit of help going through, bring in our guest. Joseph, know him well. Does amazing work at the Applied for at Jacksonville State University, and of course the host of the extremely popular Body Bags podcast. Great to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too.
So I want to play a piece of the press conference Ben Crump had, where the findings of this private pathology, and I want to get your reaction. Specifically, is about some red that was found by the pathologist during this second autopsy that apparently wasn't found during the first. Let's take a look.
And this is area of discoloration, soft tip of the head, occipital region. He said the etiology no. And he talked about how he found red discoloration when he cut open to the back of his head towards the occipital bone, and the red discoloration, and we actually saw the pictures of it. It's significant. You have no why is this red here in the back of his head, and so he note that in his report. He said that etiology of this finding is or no lacerations of the or fractures of the underlying skull. These findings are inclusive for peri injury due to the body, due to both extensive decomposition and the absence of a sudden injury. The finding, however, is significant to be highlighted in them in their further investigations. It is to reiterate that finding could have been observed in the first autopsy because the posterior head and neck dissection were not.
And the reaction there at the end was did the first pathologist not do what he do? So Justice Scott Morgan, break this down for us a little bit. How soon is this? And finding.
Well, he's in the report to the occipital region of this young man's skull. So everybody watching and listening right now, take your index finger and find the knot on the right here posterior. That's called the occiput. So diagram that I've highlighted and the doc drew up in the second autopsy, that's going to be below or inferior to this area. So it runs literally across the base here. The interesting for me, then, when I look at that image, you take a look at it, you actually see that it is highlighted in red, but he's demonstrated in a rectangle. Okay, now when you have decomposition, right, it's called diffuse, right? So it kind of spreads. But what he's demonstrating on the sketch it almost has a rectangular shape, and that's out there. I mean, anybody can see it. Now, I don't know if it's the way he drew it up or whatever the case is, but he talks about how it's not possible to delineate, because of the level of decomposition that's going on with this young man's body. And part of me, I think to a certain degree, is baffled by the level of decomposition down probably 2 days later from when last seen. And again, those are not exact numbers. I'm ballparking that. And so you have the ME for the state that would have done this exam. Now, to say that there was not a dissection backside of the head, that's an empirical possibility because when we open the head to take, you have to do what's called reflecting, which means you kind of peel it back. Now, maybe there wasn't an extensive dissection. It would, I don't know if the state ME's report says at this point either, because it might allude to this. I think the big from what the retained examiner, former chief for DC, right? It's hard for him to make heads or tails of this because level of decomposition. And he talks about layered dissection. I got to tell you, Ben, I review a lot of autopsies, participated in autopsies over the years. I'm not going to go into the grounds of say that the autopsy, the second autopsy, is as effective as I've ever seen. As a matter of fact, is an autopsy that we would do in the event we had an in custody, where, see, how can I frame this? It's not just as using a standard Y incision to open the body and take the organs out and open the head. He rolled this young man over on his stomach and dissecting posteriorly, the legs, the buttocks, the back. And he didn't see any signs of hemorrhage in those surfaces he looked for. But he does note this, and that's significant, particularly when coupled with the absence of the organs of the neck, right? Because
we're going to talk about that in a second. See this, because a lot of people see the photo and somebody back ahead.
Mm.
Is that cause that type of injury?
Good, and going back to what I'd mentioned earlier, the doc has drawn out this term. It has, I don't know if it intended to do that, but it has a rectangular shape, goes to pattern, right, of any overlying abraded area, which you think about in your knee. Many times, if you have impact, strike little bits of area, the surface of the skin, he doesn't make note of that in the second autopsy. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, because it admits composition is really set in at this point in time, so very difficult to assess.
So another significant thing that we heard from Ben Crump at the press through the autopsy result involved what provided to the second pathologist. Let's take a listen to Ben Crump.
Another limitation faced by this forensic pathologist is the absence of anterior internal neck structures. The trachea, gall cartilage, horn, and the hyoid bone were not received with the body. So he's saying that the throat was not with the body when he had Nolan Wells' body in Washington, D.C. in autopsy. And so let's discuss that with what he said about that. It is assumed that the initial pathologist retained these structures for additional evaluation. He said the anterior neck structures during initial a common forensic pathology practice. He was chief for 7 years in Washington, D.C., and he said they had concern about throat or any fracture or compression of the throat. They too will hold them back. He doesn't know throat back, but he said the throat was not with the body of Nolan Wells when he received in Washington, D.C. to perform the second autopsy. He said, nevertheless, a posterior neck dissection performed without review of the anterior neck structures is incomplete. Therefore, this pathologist cannot rule out injury to the neck as a contributor or a cause of death. He said he would need to have a medical examiner in Mississippi allow him to review throat. That his autopsy is undetermined pending investigation.
Okay, Joseph Scott Morgan. 0 to 10, how significant do you think it is, the fact that they didn't provide that? Significant to the initial pathologist to retain it, 0 to 10.
Yeah. Oh, okay. 0 to 10, I'll go 9.5. It's significant because they rarely retain the organs of the neck. And that they do this, I've participated in many cases where we've done this over the years. It's not something abnormal. It's not something sinister. It's the structures within the neck can be fully. So what we're referring to here, going up all the way toward the mouth. I'm assuming probably the tongue is absent as well. All the way down, inferior to is, those structures have all been removed. I would also imagine then what is the strap muscles. They're kind of these interlaced muscles that crisscross over the trachea in this area. Okay, if you have like a thrombin event or at the muscular level, I'm not talking about like the exterior, the tissue, the soft tissue of the skin. I'm talking about internally, because he doesn't make muscles as well. So that was probably retained. And of course, he's talking about also the hyoid. Now, we've been down the road with hyoids now, right? We've talked about it extensively in certain infamous cases out there. And that's something that, you would look for, because, the hyoid, contrary to popular belief, or has been, talked, it rarely, if ever, gets fractured as a result of a hang or something like that, because it's so high up on the neck that you'll see little horns, and you have to get really deep in there. Now, whether they saw that or not, I don't know, because they've retained those organs in the neck. So the reason is for further study or consultation with colleagues or potential value. And that evidence can either demonstrate something or demonstrates the absence of something. And so that's going to be very important in this case.
Be any reason to retain the throat? Any testing that would be done to determine drowning as a cause of death?
Good question.
Anything in there that would be tested after the fact?
Yeah. So
figure that out.
Here's the tail of the tape relative to drowning. I'm not so much concerned about the airway. What I'm concerned about is the lungs. He also said in this report he could not examine the stomach. Well, what are you looking for in the stomach? Well, if you're ingesting water, you're going to look for water in the stomach. We also check the inner ear, which is something we do when we take the calvarium off, or the skull cap, the calvarium, and we'll do an internal of the cranial. We'll check for water in the inner ear. Those are certain things here. And he said that he could not examine the lungs. He didn't say the lungs were not there. And the reason he could not examine the lungs is that the lungs had been dissected. So they've taken Mississippi and then they have sent the remnant. Remember, he actually makes note of the fact that the body arrived with the organs in a bag. Specific reference to is that he is absent the organs of the neck, but he couldn't examine the stomach. That means the stomach has been opened and examined. He took gastric content out of there, I would imagine, because we're not just interested in water, we're interested in what's going on chemistry, from a chemistry standpoint, toxicologically. So going to be absent that. And the second pathologist is not going to be able to appreciate. He has literally been through another autopsy. The first autopsy, samples have been taken, retained, all sorts of things. The physician, though, did state that he took tissue samples and has submitted histology, which means that you're going to put that stuff on the slide, you're going to look at it, and see one on microscope in these sections. One question that I think that I would like to see answered. Because if on the is on the menu here relative for consideration, and it should be diatom testing, which are these little algae that exist in certain body water. That's in the Gulf, and we know that that's water, right? So there are certain diatoms that you would find in there. It means that as you take on this water, this stuff is going to be processed, and you'll see that microscopically. It's quite fascinating. You can actually identify the little creatures, these diatoms that are left behind, and they're very distinctive. So I'm hoping that the folks in Mississippi, are going to do that testing. It's something that should be considered.
Absolutely. Incredible insight. Joseph Scott Morgan, thank you so much. That's it for us, folks. This time, I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you.
A special shout out and thank you to Benny Politan for covering this case so extensively, and to Joseph Scott Morgan for his insight regarding the autopsy. There's a lot of meat left on this bone, and there's a lot that needs to be covered. And I am hoping that somehow we'll get some kind of resolution to this case. We'll find out exactly what happened to Nolan Wells, and we'll get justice for that young man, because as I stated earlier, he needs that. Families needing closure. The community needs some kind of clarity in this case. And the bottom line is, like I said at the beginning, we're not going to let this go. Not ever. In fact, tonight, BETHEA'S BYTE does not enter its opening one. And as always, we stand where the truth begins, at the unanswered questions. And until those questions are answered, this investigation is nowhere near over. It's not over for Nolan. It's not over for his family. And it's not over for any of us. Let me check my chat again, see if anybody dropped anything. That's no, I guess not. So I guess I am going to wrap up this edition of BETHEA'S BYTE Reloaded. The final word. I want to thank you all for joining me as always. It's been a few months. Had a little in here. You all, I appreciate patience as I hear this again. Things got a list coming up on the pike. Saturday night event, Monday's in memoriam, midweek. We got all that coming down the pike. So be ready for said at the beginning. BETHEA'S BYTE is back and it's reloaded. All right, guys, I'm gonna say goodbye to you all again. I love you guys, and let's do. Until then, I'm Ernest Bethea, the last outlaw, and this is the final word. This is BETHEA'S BYTE, and it's reloaded.
Thank you so much for joining me here at the drama-free true crime destination. Please be sure to follow BETHEA'S BYTE Reloaded all over social media and support the channel through PayPal and Cash App. You can get your true crime news right here with no gimmicks, no drama, and no BS. This is BETHEA'S BYTE, and it's reloaded.